The first time Dr. Eris Thorne presented the archive of human history to the Xenohistorical Research Institute, the reaction was not what she had expected. She stood in the center of the circular chamber aboard the neutral space station, surrounded by historians from across the galaxy. The holographic displays of Earth's wars, genocides, and weapons of mass destruction hovered around her like ghosts of humanity's past. "This cannot possibly be accurate," declared Chief Analyst Kalen, the Vaughn historian whose silicon-based physiology was reflected in his rigid, crystalline features and coldly logical demeanor. "The pattern of violence you describe defies evolutionary and sociological logic." Kalen gestured toward the display, showing Earth's 20th century world wars. A species that devoted such resources to internal destruction would have collapsed before achieving interstellar capability. These archives must be exaggerated or falsified. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled historians. The aquatic Melosian historian, Nyara, her translucent skin reflecting emotional distress through waves of blue bioluminescence, spoke next. "The emotional trauma alone would have fractured your species' collective psyche. How could any sentient beings survive carrying such memory?" From the back of the chamber, the collective voice of the hive-minded Trescian delegation buzzed in harmony. "The resource allocation to destruction rather than collective advancement contradicts every successful civilization model we have documented." Eris felt the weight of her species' history pressing down on her shoulders. As a descendant of early Earth immigrants, she had spent years preparing for this presentation, feeling both profound shame and complex pride about humanity's journey. Now, the rejection of its basic authenticity caught her off guard. "I understand your skepticism," she began, "but Earth evolved under unique pressures. The competitive environment shaped human psychology towards strong in-group bonds and out-group suspicion. Resource scarcity. Irrelevant," Kalen interrupted. 97% of spacefaring species evolved under resource competition. None developed the pattern of systematic self-destruction you describe. The most logical conclusion is that these accounts are fabricated or greatly exaggerated. Eris watched as the alien historians examined the holographic representations of human warfare, with expressions ranging from clinical detachment to what could only be described as revulsion. The Vaughn delegation's crystalline appendages clicked in what she recognized as their gesture of dismissal. The Melosian's skin had darkened to deep indigo, a sign of emotional distress. "Perhaps," Eris suggested, "we should approach this differently. Rather than simply reviewing events, let me explain the underlying psychological and social dynamics that drove human conflict." Kalen's crystalline features refracted light as he tilted his head in what Eris had learned was a gesture of reluctant acceptance. "Proceed, but understand that the burden of proof remains significant. These accounts defy the established parameters of species development." Eris nodded, realizing she needed a deeper approach to help these alien minds comprehend humanity's violent past and how it had shaped their present. The future membership of Earth in the Galactic Alliance depended on it. As the chamber lights dimmed, Eris accessed the advanced psychosocial simulation programs developed by human scientists to understand their own history. The central holographic display shifted to show primitive human tribal structures. "To understand human violence, we must start with our evolutionary psychology," Eris began. "Unlike species that evolved through collective cooperation like the Trescians, or those who developed in environments of abundance like the Melosians, humans evolved as tribal primates with strong bonds to small groups and inherent suspicion of outsiders." She projected images of early human tribes, highlighting the protective formations and territorial behavior. This us versus them psychology was initially adaptive. It ensured group survival in dangerous environments with competing predators and limited resources. Kalen's crystalline form shifted slightly. Many species evolved with territorial imperatives. The Chithri and Xanthor both developed from pack predators with similar dynamics. Yet neither proceeded to systematically destroy members of their own species at the scale you described. "True," Eris acknowledged. But Earth presented a unique combination of factors. When humans developed agriculture and settled in larger communities, violence didn't diminish. It transformed and became organized. The display shifted to show ancient human cities, armies, and early empires. Agriculture created surpluses, which required protection. It also created inequality and hierarchies based on control of land and resources. Violence became institutionalized as warfare, a means of acquiring territory, resources, and labor. Eras highlighted various ancient empires: Assyrian, Roman, Mongol, and others. Human history followed cycles of imperial expansion through conquest, relative internal stability during imperial dominance, and eventual decline through internal conflict or external pressure. Kalen's crystalline appendages clicked rapidly. Eris recognized this as the Vaughn equivalent of skeptical calculation. The inefficiency is staggering. The resources devoted to destruction rather than advancement would create unsustainable societal drag. No species could progress technologically while allocating so much to mutual destruction. And yet we did, Eris replied, often because of conflict, not despite it. Many technological advancements came through military competition. Nyara, the Melosian historian, rippled her fins in distress. But surely your species recognized the self-destructive nature of this pattern? Were there no movements toward peace? Throughout our history, Eris affirmed, bringing up images of religious leaders, philosophers, and peace movements. Humans have always maintained a complex internal struggle between our violent tendencies and our capacity for empathy and cooperation. Various philosophical and religious traditions attempted to constrain violence, create ethical frameworks, and promote cooperation beyond tribal boundaries. The Trescian collective buzzed thoughtfully, a species at war with its own nature. Fascinating, though troubling. Yes, Eris agreed, but that internal conflict is crucial to understanding us. Humans didn't simply accept violence as inevitable. We consistently struggled against it, even as we perpetuated it. This contradiction defines much of our psychological and cultural development. As the first session concluded, Kalen approached Eris privately. Your presentation is disturbing but compelling. However, I remain unconvinced that a species could survive its own destructive tendencies at the scale you describe. Tomorrow, you must explain how humanity didn't annihilate itself long before achieving space travel. Eris nodded. Tomorrow we'll discuss the industrialization of warfare and how it brought humanity to the brink of self-destruction and what pulled us back. The following day, the chamber was filled with tense anticipation. Eris began without preamble, projecting images of factories, railways, and early mechanized weapons. The Industrial Revolution fundamentally transformed human warfare, just as it transformed every other aspect of our civilization, she explained. Mass production, chemistry, metallurgy, and transportation converted warfare from limited engagements into industrial-scale slaughter. The holographic displays showed trenches from World War I, the devastation of chemical weapons, and the aerial bombardment of cities. Several of the alien historians recoiled visibly. By the early 20th century, humans had developed weapons capable of killing tens of thousands in single attacks. But more importantly, we had developed ideologies that could mobilize entire populations for total war. What do you mean by ideologies? Asked the Trescian collective. Belief systems that transcended traditional tribal or religious boundaries, Eris explained. Nationalism, fascism, communism. These provided new justifications for violence and new methods of organizing society for conflict. The display shifted to show mass rallies, propaganda posters, and industrial war production. These ideologies allowed states to harness industrial capacity and population loyalty in unprecedented ways. Warfare became total, involving entire economies and populations, not just armies. Kalen studied the displays with growing discomfort. There's a terrible logic to it, he admitted reluctantly. a systematic optimization for destruction. But surely there were limits. Eris's expression grew grave as she shifted the display to show mushroom clouds rising over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In 1945, humans developed nuclear weapons, the first technology capable of potentially destroying our entire species. The chamber fell completely silent. Even Kalen's usually clicking appendages were still. You created self-extinction technology. Nyara's skin had gone almost white with shock. And you used it against your own kind? Twice in warfare, Eris confirmed. And then we built thousands more, each many times more powerful than the originals. The Trescian collective buzzed in agitation. This contradicts all rational evolutionary behavior. Species self-preservation is a universal constant. That's the paradox, Eris agreed. But human civilization continued for decades under what we called MAD, mutual assured destruction. The major powers possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy each other many times over, but were deterred from using them precisely because there could be no victory. She displayed information about the Cold War, showing the nuclear arsenals and their global reach. Multiple human nations maintain the capability to end our civilization at any moment, keeping thousands of weapons ready to launch within minutes. Kalen's crystalline structure had taken on an unusual opacity, a sign of deep distress in Volans. I begin to understand why many dismiss these archives as fabrication. The idea that a species would balance on the edge of self-annihilation for decades defies all rational analysis. And yet we survived, Eris said quietly, sometimes through diplomatic skill, sometimes through secret channels of communication between enemies, and sometimes through sheer luck. She displayed information about near misses, the Cuban Missile Crisis, false alarms in command centers, miscommunications that nearly triggered launches. There were at least a dozen occasions when human civilization came within minutes of potential destruction. Ow! The question came from Nyara, her fins trembling. How did your species not destroy itself? That, said Eris, is the crucial question. And the answer lies in what happened next, including why I'm standing here today. The next morning, the alien historians gathered with a new intensity. The previous day's revelations had shaken them, yet most still seemed to doubt that such a self-destructive species could have survived to join interstellar society. Eris began by showing the post-Cold War world, with nuclear arsenals still in place, but international cooperation growing through global trade networks, the early internet, and initial space exploration efforts. Humanity remained divided, with regional conflicts continuing, she explained. But the experience of living under the shadow of potential extinction had created a fragile understanding of our shared vulnerability. International institutions, imperfect as they were, worked to manage conflicts that might escalate to global threats. Kalen interrupted. Yet according to your archives, you still maintained enough nuclear weapons to destroy yourselves several times over. The fundamental instability remained. Yes, Eris acknowledged. Human progress has never been linear. We often took 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But something happened that accelerated our development in unexpected ways. The display shifted to show astronomical imaging. In 2029, the Arecibo Observatory detected an unmistakable artificial signal from the direction of Epsilon Eridani. After decades of searching and debate, humanity had confirmation. We were not alone. The images showed news headlines, celebrations, and religious gatherings from around Earth. The psychological impact was profound and global. Religious frameworks were challenged. National rivalries suddenly seemed less significant, and humanity faced an existential question about our place in a wider cosmos. First contact is indeed transformative for most species, the Trescian collective acknowledged. But rarely does it completely reshape existing conflict patterns. It didn't eliminate conflict overnight, Eris agreed, but it redirected it. Rather than aiming our competitive instincts and military technologies at each other, nations began racing to develop planetary defense systems and space exploration capabilities, both to protect against potential threats and to impress or compete with potential alien civilizations. She showed the rapid advancement of Earth space programs, the establishment of lunar bases, and the first human missions to Mars. Military budgets weren't immediately cut. Instead, they were redirected towards space-based systems and exploration technologies. The same competitive drive that had nearly destroyed us now pushed us outward. Nyara's skin rippled with cautious interest. You channeled your aggressive tendencies rather than eliminated them. Exactly, Eris confirmed. And when actual contact was established with the Galactic Alliance Scouts 7 years later, humanity approached negotiations with both enthusiasm and caution. The display shifted to show the first official meetings between human representatives and Alliance envoys. The Alliance was concerned about our violent history, just as you are now. Humans were wary of external control or influence. The negotiations lasted nearly 3 years. What changed? Kalen asked. The Alliance has strict protocols about integrating species with ongoing internal violence. A crisis in the Deneb sector, Eris replied, bringing up new displays showing a conflict between 2 Alliance members over a resource-rich asteroid belt. The dispute between the Lathri and Vexanyar confederations had reached an impasse that threatened to destabilize a key trade route. I recall this incident, Kalen acknowledged. The resolution came through an unexpected third-party intervention. Yes, Eris said, a human diplomatic and security team proposed and implemented a solution based on our long experience with armed standoffs and resource disputes. We established a demilitarized monitoring system combined with a resource-sharing agreement that acknowledged both sides' concerns while preventing either from gaining a tactical advantage. The approach was unorthodox, Kalen admitted. It was human, Eris corrected. We applied lessons from our Cold War and various peacekeeping operations, combined with new technologies adapted from our military systems. We understood the psychology of armed confrontation in ways that more peaceful species couldn't. The Trescian collective buzzed with what Eris recognized as their version of thoughtful consideration. Your species found application for its martial tendencies in a constructive context. We began to, Eris qualified. The process is ongoing. Humans still struggle with violence and conflict, but we've found ways to channel our competitive nature and our understanding of conflict into valuable roles within a larger community of species. As the final day of evaluation began, the atmosphere in the chamber had shifted noticeably. The alien historians still regarded human history with horror, but the outright dismissal had been replaced by a troubled fascination. Kalen addressed the group first. Having reviewed the complete historical archives and Dr. Thorne's explanations, I must revise my initial assessment. While the level of internal violence in human history remains disturbing from both evolutionary and ethical perspectives, the evidence supports its authenticity. He turned to Eris. I cannot claim to fully understand how your species survive its own destructive tendencies, but the pattern you've demonstrated shows a certain twisted logic, a constant cycling between creating tools of destruction and then developing systems to contain them. Nyara's skin had settled into a contemplative purple hue. The emotional resilience of humans is remarkable. To carry such historical trauma and yet maintain the capacity for empathy and cooperation. It suggests psychological mechanisms worthy of further study. The Trescian collective added, the adaptability demonstrated is impressive, if concerning. Few species have transformed so many times under self-imposed pressures. Eris nodded gratefully, then addressed the core question. Based on your evaluation, what role do you see for humanity within the Alliance? Kalen's crystalline features refracted light as he considered. Initially, I considered recommending against full membership. However, I now believe humans offer valuable perspective and capabilities precisely because of your troubled history. What capabilities specifically? Asked one of the junior historians. Crisis management, Kalen replied promptly. Rapid innovation under existential pressure. Understanding of conflict psychology that more peacefully evolved species lack. And perhaps most importantly, the ability to recognize destructive patterns that other species might not see until too late. There's more, added Nyara. The art and philosophy born from human suffering contains insights that our cultures never needed to develop. Your literature, music, and ethical frameworks are shaped by your struggles in ways that offer unique perspectives. Eris felt a complex pride rising within her. Not pride in the violence of human history, but in humanity's constant struggle against its own darker nature and its eventual finding of a wider purpose. I should tell you more about my own background, she said. My great-grandparents left Earth during the post-contact immigration. They were part of a group that believed humanity needed to scatter beyond our home system as insurance against our self-destructive tendencies. They feared we might yet destroy ourselves before we fully matured as a species. She accessed a personal file showing an old family photograph. They settled on Tau Ceti E, where I was born. I became a historian specifically to understand the complicated legacy they carried with them, the shame and the hope intertwined in human history. Kalen gestured toward the central display, where Earth rotated slowly. And what is your assessment now, Dr. Thorne? Has your species truly moved beyond its violent nature? No, Eris answered honestly. We haven't eliminated our capacity for violence, nor will we. But we've learned to recognize it, to create systems that channel and constrain it, and increasingly, to find constructive applications for the innovative drive that once created weapons. She brought up displays showing human peacekeeping forces working alongside other alliance species, human diplomatic teams mediating complex disputes, and human scientists collaborating on multi-species research projects. What we offer the Alliance isn't perfection or tranquility. It's a hard-won understanding of conflict and its resolution. It's experience with surviving existential risk. And perhaps most importantly, it's a perspective that more peaceful species lack, recognition of how quickly things can escalate and how essential it is to create systems that manage our darker impulses. After a period of private deliberation, the Historical Evaluation Committee returned with their decision. Kalen spoke for the group. We recommend that Earth be granted full membership status in the Galactic Alliance, with provisions for ongoing monitoring of certain military technologies. We further recommend that human expertise be formally integrated into Alliance crisis management protocols and conflict resolution frameworks. He added, while many of us remain disturbed by human history, we acknowledge that this very history has created a species uniquely positioned to help prevent similar patterns in interspecies relations. The Alliance was founded on the principle that diversity of experience strengthens us all. Human experience, however troubling, represents a vital addition to our collective knowledge. As the formal session concluded, Eris remained in the chamber, gazing at the slowly rotating image of Earth. She felt the weight of humanity's violent past, but also the potential of its future role. Humans would never fully escape their nature, but perhaps they had finally found a context in which their hard-won lessons could serve a greater purpose. The universe was vast and largely unknown. New challenges and threats would inevitably arise. And when they did, humanity's long experience with facing the darkness, including the darkness within itself, might prove more valuable than anyone could have predicted. A species that had repeatedly brought itself to the brink of destruction had found a way to turn that terrible knowledge toward ensuring others never came so close to the edge. It wasn't redemption exactly, but it was purpose. And perhaps that was enough. Eris touched the Earth hologram gently, watching the continents rotate under her fingers. We're still writing our history, she whispered to herself. And now it's part of something larger than ourselves. Behind her, Kalen lingered at the chamber entrance. An unexpected outcome, he observed. I began by doubting the authenticity of your species' history, and concluded by recommending your full integration into ours. Eris turned to face him. History isn't destiny, Kalen. Even the most violent species can change when given sufficient reason and opportunity. Let us hope so, the Vaughn historian replied, his crystalline features catching the light from Earth's hologram. Because we've just welcomed a species with unparalleled knowledge of destruction into our peaceful alliance. Future historians will judge whether that decision was wisdom or folly. They will, Eris agreed. But that's true of all history, isn't it? It's always being written, revised, and understood new. That's something humans have learned through all our struggles. The end is never really the end, just another beginning. As she left the chamber, Eris carried with her the complex legacy of human history. Its darkness and its light, its violence and its hope, its terrible mistakes and its hard-won wisdom. Whatever came next, humanity would face it with eyes open to both the darkness and the light within themselves. That awareness, purchased at such terrible cost, might prove to be their greatest contribution to the stars.